I feel like if I fail, it's not just me failing. Now I'm interconnected with everyone. I'm failing my parents. I'm failing my sister. I'm failing you.
I think a recovering eldest daughter. That's sometimes how I jokingly introduce myself, recovering eldest daughter of immigrant families. And then you'll just see people in the room be like nodding. There's just a knowing. Eldest daughters are so bad at asking for help. And my experience, me included, at me.
Welcome back to Eldest Daughters Talk series. This is Linda, co-host.
And this is Yoo Jin.
We are here with Yoo Jin, first-generation Korean-American oldest daughter, artist, and DEI consultant based in Washington, D.C. She is the founder of Eldest Daughters Collective, a grassroots, community-based healing collective centering the experiences of oldest daughters with a particular focus on Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. Welcome, Yoo Jin.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
Likewise, too. We are so excited to have this conversation with you, Eugene. Well, before we get started, besides what Linda had presented you as, is there any fun things that you would like for us to know about you?
Oh, yes. I think something a lot of people know about me now is that I'm an astrologer. So that's something that's fun and colors the way I look at the world and understand people through one lens. So definitely I'm a practicing, blooming astrologer.
Oh, that's very interesting. How did you get into astrology? And is that more like, I know in Korea they have Korean astrology and there's Western astrology.
Yeah.
What is the vibe here?
Yes, absolutely. My family does have a Korean astrologer. I practice Western astrology. That's what I just am most familiar with. I actually learned about astrology first in 5th grade as a 10-year-old. This girl in my class brought an astrology book to recess and then was drawing everyone's, zodiac symbols on their hand. And that's the first time I heard about it. And then ever since I was hooked, I was like, I love this. And I went in the book and wrote all of my friends' signs.
Oh, wow.
And names.
Really fascinated you, sounds like. And I don't know much about astrology, but what is your sign since you mentioned it?
Oh my God. Okay, I'm a Cancer. I'm a water sign.
And is there any stereotypes around that?
Yes. I feel like Cancers honestly get sometimes a bad rep. The stereotypes is that we cry a lot, which honestly I do. But you know what? It's part of my healing practice. It's to release and cry. But I think sensitive is a big one for Cancers. But you know what? All of these things I embrace as a superpower. So there.
Love that. I mean, everyone, it comes off as strength as well, right? I wonder, would you be able to let us know what we are? I am very far from the astrology world, so I'm so curious
Oh my
from your
gosh.
lens,
If I could,
your world lens, how you might see me. So I was born in May. I don't know what that makes me.
Ooh, okay. Do you want me to guess?
Yes.
Okay. I would guess for you, Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
You're a Taurus?
I think I am. Yeah.
Okay, what's the
What
date?
day is it?
14th. May 14th.
Yeah. That would be Taurus.
What characteristics
Oh, okay.
would you have for
I would
Taurus?
say, okay, characteristics of Taurus. I mean, so we're going to go with core traits right now because of course we have so many different placements in our chart. I need to do the astrology disclaimer. No two signs are exactly the same, et cetera, et cetera. But some of the traits of Taurus, which I love Tauruses because that's also my moon sign. Grounded, likes structure and reliability. Likes cozy things in their home, really likes to set up home. Taurus is a sign that's also, it's an earth sign. It's the bull. So it's also someone who tends to be able to keep the long course and stick to a vision and is reliable. And then also loves aesthetics because Taurus is a sign that's ruled by Venus. So it's that's the cozies in the home, the candles, fuzzy socks, just the little things can mean so much. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. Everything you just mentioned sounds like me. I'm
I love that.
Home is so important to me. And having simple, like practical home that is also aesthetically beautiful is really important to me. So that completely lands.
I love that. Love
Yeah, and
this.
Susan, something that audience may know about Susan by now is she did her bachelor's in fine arts. She did painting, artist. So like visual things are really, I mean, is it important? But like she has good eyes around aesthetic for sure.
Yep, I'm
Thank you.
peeping the cute, decoration behind you on your wall.
That I made actually.
You made that? That's beautiful.
Thank you, thank you. Well, Linda, should we, get into your
I
a little
mean,
bit?
want to know. Yeah.
I mean, my birthday is in July 25th, which it makes me Leo. But I also heard a couple years ago that the traditional Western astrology was all wrong because there was something
I,
calculated wrong. I don't know. So I was like, what does that make me now? So I,
I
but
know. I
if
saw
you're
that too.
following the traditional way, I guess I'm still Leo. Yeah.
It's so funny, Linda, because I was gonna guess fire sign for you, and you are a fire
Oh,
sign.
fires in my
Yeah.
energy.
No, I love it. Okay. Leos. Leo is ruled by the sun. So it's so funny because you're wearing yellow. Very
My
bright
favorite
color.
color.
Very true. It's your
Favorite,
favorite color. Yes, like true
favorite.
to your side. You're very bright, lights up a room. I think like core traits of Leo tends to be someone who's not afraid to be a leader, to like show up, be seen. But something that I don't think Leos get a lot of credit for is that they also, not only do they like being seen and shining, they like to use their light to help others shine too.
Oh,
Some of
absolutely.
that's one of the core traits of Leo. It's like it's kind of like when I win, we all win. So like there's no one like as like I feel like there's no one like as like loyal and like the best hype person than a Leo. That's been my experience with Leos in my life, is like someone who's really got your back and helps others shine.
Oh my God. I feel like that exactly describes Linda. Like she really has people's back. And I know that that's like her core value as well, is really making other people shine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for little mini readings.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder. I mean, I don't know a lot of astrology, but I wonder like how that can also interact with our, birth order, right? Like
Mhm.
in oldest, as we've been talking about being an oldest daughter, and how your personality and oldest daughters, in pressure, responsibilities, and they all play out. Because Susan and I, we talk about how we're both oldest daughters of a Korean immigrant family. However, our oldest daughter traits kind of appear differently, even though we resonate in a bigger scale. So yeah, I would love to hear more about where you're coming from and Oldest Daughters Collective.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. I just want to name like how special and powerful it is to have three eldest, three Korean immigrants. Like this is making my heart sore. So let's just name this historic moment. Let's see. For me, being an eldest daughter is so informed by my Korean American background. Like there's a lot of, I mean, you really know, as Korean immigrants yourselves, it's just like the different layers of collective care, interdependence, and being first generation immigrant. There are ways that also I have different privileges than my parents. I learned English here, and I picked up on it, in a different degree, just being young. And so there are ways that I interacted with the world and supported my parents that I think especially children who are not from immigrant families don't fully understand, like translating certain bills or phone calls,
Yeah.
answering the Comcast and be like, yes, this
Yeah.
is she, right? And clearly it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
8-year-old. And just like being that translator in like so many ways, like direction, language, cultural translating, just paving a path that our parents weren't able to experience just being here. So those things are definitely entwined for me.
Absolutely. Taking on so much of adult responsibilities as a child is something that I think a lot of us carry as eldest daughters, and as
Exactly.
eldest daughters in an immigrant household, especially, right? I have
Yeah.
this memory that's coming up for me as you were talking about the phone call that are saying, yeah, this is she, right? I have that moment too where there was one day in middle school where I had skipped school, right? it was like this big moment where my friends and I were like decided we're not gonna go to school today.
Oh
We're
my
gonna skip
gosh,
school.
rebel.
We're gonna go to the library and hide in the library. You know, we didn't even have anywhere fun to go to, but it was just the idea of skipping school was really fun, right? And so we did. But of course we got caught because there was a whole bunch of like 5 Korean, Korean American immigrant girls that like
Yeah.
skipped school that day in the same classroom. And so the teacher found out, and the teacher wanted to make the phone call to my home to talk to my family. And they were like, well, you're going to have to translate what you did to your parents.
Oh my
And it was that
gosh.
moment of like internal battle for me, right? I was like, ooh, do I like tell the truth and be honest in translating this? Or I could totally get away because I am translating for my parents around like what I did wrong, right? But
Oh my
they weren't
gosh.
able to get to my parents, luckily. So I didn't
Okay,
have
I
to
was
go
gonna ask
through
what you
the,
wanted to do.
go through the guilt of lying to my parents.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, that's badass that you even did that as a kid. I think I was such a rule follower for a certain amount of time. I would be mortified, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eugene, I'm curious to hear about yours too, if you have any stories of the eldest daughter responsibility story.
My brother Fran, who I love, he's 7 years younger than I am. And there's that keen sense of like being called big when you're small. It's like I'm still a child too. But there are ways I felt. I mean, one, we could think about it through like nature and nurture, where I think like my personality naturally lends to wanting to be nurturing. But there was also, whether it's like stated directly, which in my Korean household, certain messages are told to you directly, right? You're the Nuna, you have to do this now, you have to care for it, right? Like there's like very direct messages about our roles. And then there's all the subtle things that like, especially as like a highly sensitive child, I just picked up really quickly. I was like, okay, I'm being praised when I'm helping in these ways, or like I'm not being recognized when I set boundaries in other ways. So I look back and see just some things that I did naturally where I was like, where did I learn to do that? So when my brother came home from the hospital, at the time they gave you like a VHS tape, which like it's so funny because that's like not a thing anymore. RIP. But VHS tape for like new moms to like watch different like tutorials on how to take care of your baby. And one of them was how to give your baby a bath and like that. It's like a plastic,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
tiny bath for your infant. And I just remember watching it. And then you're supposed to put your hand in the water to make sure it's not too hot. And then you can put your baby in. And I just did that. I like watched the video and I like, my mom was supervising, of course. But I like insisted on helping in that way. I felt like a real sense of pride being able to help at such a young age. So that's one memory I'm thinking of, or like putting my brother on my back, and like wrapping him,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
blanket.
Like one of the things that Linda also talks a lot about is how she was being told, like directly, you're the second mom because you're the eldest daughter, like you're the second mom. And it makes me think about those moments, Linda, when you were mentioning about that too. Like these are motherly responsibilities, like direct care of an infant, bathing an infant, carrying an infant on your back, feeding an infant, these are direct motherly roles that you have taken on at 7-year-old.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. I saw on Instagram the other day on a reel where this like a 3-year-old, I would say, daughter, older sister now, was kind of like holding the little infant, the baby sister, on her arm, and then the mother of the child posted it. Oh, she's holding her little sister just like I hold her, and then hold her little sister, baby. And then the shit actually was so unnecessary because she put that, oh, she's gonna be a good mom. I'm like, say that to a 3-year-old, that was unnecessary. But on the comment section, there was all this debate around like, is she putting that pressure to be parented by, or little girls, they want to mimic their moms,
Right.
when they have real siblings, right? There are definitely older children who are excited, they want to hang out, and then what can you do with an infant? You have to hold her, right?
Yeah.
Kind of feed her. Like infant cannot play, right? Or even the younger sibling kind of grows up a little bit, like into how you interact because you're the older one, right? And that they used to be kind of helpless. The dynamic uh com- is kind of caring for the younger sibling,
Yeah.
right? And is that nurture or nature, right? Because there
Yeah.
was a whole debate around it because I know as developmentally, kids want to be involved, want to do what their parents are doing, and they want to bond with their, infant baby, younger sibling, and sometimes there's not a lot of ways, unless they do what the parents are doing. But is the parents kind of making them do? So there were a whole debate around that, and there's no right or wrong answer there, right? And I think
Yeah.
it can be very we have to kind of see case by case. But for me, I don't think I was that interested in my younger sister. Apparently, I was annoyed because I couldn't cook her.
Real. I get that.
You're taking the love away from
You're
me.
like, hello. Who's
Right.
this?
I mean, that is a very common thing for older child too. They have all the love, all the attention, and suddenly you have this rival, right? And especially you have like same gender. There has been studies that's even more.
Mhm.
And I wasn't like super like from what I hear, I wasn't super fond of my little sister, but I was also like not mean or anything. But I was getting annoyed every time my sister cried because she's a baby, helpless, she's gonna cry, right? So it would drive me. I'm 2 years older, 2 year old me so hard that I will really put a pacifier on her mouth or put a blanket over her. I
So funny.
Yeah, and my sister still kind of, holds that against me. Like, how can you do that? You try to kill me. I'm like, I was two. I was two.
Yeah. You can't be held liable. You're a little baby.
Little baby, yeah. But definitely when I got a little older, like 5, 7, right? 5 and 7 is still young, but my parents, both of my parents started working. So there were a lot of times, in Korea back then, like you can stay home as kids,
Yeah.
as not young.
Yeah.
So my parents will go, and then the duty of making sure my sister eats. My mom will make everything, but like hey, make sure you get rice from rice cooker. There are side dishes in the refrigerator. Like those things become my responsibility.
It's really interesting to hear you share, Linda. I mean, there's so much that you shared that's still like sitting with me. And like one of the things was around the word that came up for me was parentification and also interdependence. So like two things are coming up for me very prominently where I think especially, I'm sure you both, especially with your backgrounds, know, way more than I do, but I'm noticing a trend in like pop psychology and like where people are using big words that are connected to therapy words or words in psychological practice, and it's being overly simplified. So for example, codependency is a word that I think I see that a lot. And it's a word that's I grapple with a lot because I think when it's divorced from a cultural context, it feels really reductionist. It's like you're just like saying, oh, that's codependency or not. And then when I think about my role as an eldest daughter, eldest child in my family, it comes up because I think sometimes there's this very black and white, no, children should never do this or should always do this. That comes up for me where I look back at my experience with a lot of nuance, where I understand being the eldest, there were times where I know I was parentified. There are ways like I shouldn't have had to have those kind of conversations or deal with certain dynamics. And then there are other ways where culturally it was very affirming and a deep part of like our values and practice. So coming up for me just around, I think it is okay for siblings to be helping to care for other siblings, so long as it's like age and developmentally appropriate. And like that child still gets to be a child and gets to be cared for too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like for younger kids, like, mimicking their parents, as I said, or like caring for the younger sibling is a play in some ways, right? As long as it's not become a responsibility, forced upon, that there's no fine line. I think that is a hard thing to call sometimes.
Yeah.
And as we see cultural communities like immigrant families or in other countries, right, where collectivism is more important, like everybody kind of chip in, even if you're a child, right? And everybody help out, and that's seen as a strength. It's for immigrant families. Like it was a lot of survival, and there's a lot of survival narratives in there too. But it's also resilience. It's also how they thrive, how they find strength, how they find connection. So yeah, a lot of things it's sitting with me as well.
Yeah. I hear that we all have this underlying duality of seeing ourselves being the eldest daughter and having parentified, even as a child, right? As we're describing some of our childhood stories of caring for our younger siblings, there's a lot of pride in it too. Yeah, I did that. I raised you. So there is that sense of pride too. And the sense of responsibility that we had learned as a child, it really served us well into adulthood as well, and being able to take care of ourselves and other people too. And so I think there's so much strength in being the eldest daughter and being parentified in some ways too, when it comes to certain cultural contexts.
Being an eldest is
Definitely,
like something that I've had to grapple with in my life is, am I in relationships that fill my cup too? Because I'm so self-identified with being someone who is a helper or a giver in a particular way with this eldest identity. There was this time in college where I was dating someone at the time, and I received feedback because I wasn't able to communicate my needs directly. And that's something that also came from, I think, just cultural and eldest daughter things, where it was it was never fully supposed to be about me. It's about okay, well, you exist in the context of your family. And you are not just Yoo Jin, you're Fran's older sister, you're our daughter. There's always something tying, which I think was helpful. But as a kid, it was also very burdensome, right? Because it felt like everyone is watching me, or I'm not allowed to do certain things or communicate certain things if it doesn't please others. So this showed up in my romantic relationships and my friendships too, where I wasn't able to communicate direct needs for fear of upsetting the other person. But guess what happened? I just kept all of that stuff pent up inside, and then it would come out in all these other ways that were not helpful. And I just received feedback where it was I need you to communicate with me. I cannot help you if you do not share honestly. And I had to realize that was also a pattern that was passed down. It's having expectations that were not realistic or fair of people, or wanting someone else to anticipate my needs in the ways that I was taught to anticipate needs for my family. Whereas that's actually, as lovely as that can be, that's not fair to just expect people to do for you. That's not what love is. Love is clear communication.
Yeah, and that really resonates. That self-sacrifice that is really put on the oldest daughters, and oldest daughters even more so. And a couple of years ago, Yellow Chair Collective has been around about 7 years now. And it initially started as just me, and then we kind of grew there. I think maybe 2 years ago, Sujin, we were about 20 staff members, 20 therapists, and we were struggling actually. It looks really like we were growing and expanding. But because we started this practice without really thinking that we were gonna grow this much, and we just want to meet the needs of the community. My heart was always I want to create community within and then external, do the work, in provide services that we needed, our community needed, we didn't have growing up.
Yeah.
Right. So, and my background is social work. I didn't have any business training, so this Sujin. And we were really struggling that, people look at our finances, they'll be like, how are you still operating? I'm like, no, we're still operating. But it was actually at our sacrifice. People actually do not know, but we were taking pay cuts. We were putting in our personal money at times. And I remember having this conversation with my therapist over and over again. I felt like I was responsible for everything and everyone. And I don't know if you remember this, Sujin, but I was telling Sujin that I feel like if I fail, it's not just me failing. Now I'm interconnected with everyone. I'm failing my parents, I'm failing my sisters, I'm failing you, I'm failing all my staff members and their families because they're depending on me. It was very dramatic to, think of that now, but that's how I felt about responsibilities, because that interconnectedness, you're not just you impact everybody. I mean, I have to calm down and then figure out, hey, like, it is okay. Like, and then I also need to take care of myself. It's not all about sacrifice, and people will be okay. Even I take a break, even our company may not do well. We're fine now, but at the time, we were like, is it even worth it to keep operating at our expenses? And I felt like if we were to make a decision to close or downside, I felt like I was failing like everybody, not their staff, but their families too. It's like, wow.
Feel like the underlying theme that we have is around like sacrifice, and how as children of immigrants and immigrants, like we definitely hear like actual reminders of the sacrifices that our parents have made so many times, right? From all the sacrifices our ancestors have made over and over again. Those are the guilt trips that we live with as children, right? Why we cannot leave one grain of rice on the table to be left behind because there's somebody in our ancestor that has made a huge sacrifice so I can have this rice bowl on the table, right? Like everything feels like there's huge consequences when there has been such huge sacrifice that has made to have our day to day. And we live in that like past stories, and it lives into our identities and our relationships over and over again. I feel like that's kind of a theme for a lot of like eldest daughters too, that there has been a lot of sacrifice that we experience and we've seen our parents continuously making as eldest daughter. So then we play into those sacrifices in our relationships over and over again too. So Eugene, I'm curious to hear more about, like what your understanding and healing process also looked like too in this journey.
As an eldest daughter.
As an eldest daughter,
Yeah.
overcoming some of these, difficult relationships that you've just also discussed about.
Yeah. It's taken a lot of help and work. It's taken, of course, like individual commitment on my end, which is deeply tied to like my relationships. I started to realize the ways some of my coping mechanisms and things that helped me to survive as a kid did not translate as I was growing up. So there are ways like I'm still, I think, a recovering eldest daughter. That's sometimes how I jokingly introduce myself, recovering eldest daughter of immigrant families. And then you'll just see people in the room be like nodding. There's just a knowing. So it's a process I'm still in, probably will be in for like the rest of my life. But things that have helped me is therapy for sure. I found therapy in college, and definitely learning about trauma recovery has been critical for me, because there are ways that I didn't understand. Linda, kind of like what you were saying, even if I didn't qualify for DSM kind of PTSD, there are ways that I recognize that I experienced all kinds of different traumas that I didn't know were that until I found the language for it and the framework for it. And being able to identify when I was in a trauma response has been critical, because in the moment when I'm activated or triggered, it does feel like that's the truth. Like what you're sharing about you disappointing everyone. But have you all seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
I actually have that.
Oh my,
Long time.
so good. Okay. It's this it's this animated show on Nickelodeon, where there's just a lot of different themes that I think especially like immigrant families appreciate. There's things around like lineage, colonization, and it's a kids show. But the Avatar is the master of like all elements, who's supposed to bring world peace. This is a very quick spark notes, but there's this idea that the Avatar is connected to past avatars, and there's a way like Aang, who is the Avatar in the series, will do like visualizations to connect with ancestors, and then just sees like a whole line of like everyone appearing. That's what I thought of when you were talking, Linda. It's like that was like in a strength-based way. When I feel like I'm disappointing people, I see that line of
Mm.
like everyone too, of like, I'm letting down everyone. And I had to realize through therapy and lots of help from my friends and people with healthier boundaries than I had, was that it is my responsibility to heal. And sometimes healing means disappointing family. It means disappointing the people I love. And it means centering myself in a way that I haven't had to practice before. So it also means like getting it wrong a lot and being uncomfortable. I didn't realize how uncomfortable it would be to be centered, actually. Like to be in the center, to be asked how I'm doing. So therapy was very uncomfortable for me for a really long time.
I think it's one of the things that Linda and I have talked a lot about in our therapeutic work with Asian American clients in general, eldest daughters in general, is this idea and concept of self-compassion. And it's such a new language in our culture and identity of being able to provide a space where disappointment can still exist in our lives, like you mentioned. And we could still hold space for that disappointment as well as our needs, right? And so to have space for all of that in our lives is so new to us.
Definitely.
Yeah, I want to shift the gear a little bit, and would love to hear more about how did Oldest Daughters Collective have started?
Oh, sure. Okay. So, Eldest Daughters Collective started from a conversation in a hotel room at my friend Asif's wedding. We were getting ready. We is my friend Soleil, Mariama, and I were getting ready to go to the ceremony, and we all met like that weekend for the wedding. So we hadn't even known each other before, but there's a way we just gravitated to each other and started connecting. Where we had a conversation. Through the conversation, realized we're all eldest daughters, do like anti-racism work, and are immigrants. So we were like, wait, I think I was like, wait, are you the oldest? And then it's like, yeah. It's like, are you the oldest? Yes. And we all were like, oh my gosh. So in that context, we were just talking about how we really wish there were spaces. I was like, wow, it really would be nice to have a space like this. They were like, absolutely. I wish there was a space where we could just talk about being the eldest or the only. Um, and I was like, should I make, would you all come? And they're like, yes, we would come, make it. And so literally that's how Eldest Daughters Collective was started, was through, that was like kind of like the tipping point moment. I've been having conversations with friends for years about this identity. And a lot of my best friends happen to be eldest daughters. But that's how the collective was really born, was like from that conversation and being like, I want a space like this just for us. And so I created it and I asked for help. And, my close friends answered the call, and that's how we got here today. This is a very Spark Notes version.
Wow. And y'all have been growing in programs and events. Can you tell us some of the events you were able to host and work?
Oh my God. Yes. So we have monthly virtual meetings. So we're a national collective. We have people across the country, across all of the coasts. So that's something we've been doing consistently. We'll sometimes have a guest speaker, which we're excited to have you soon. And we try to bring other eldest, but we have guest speakers of all kinds. And when we first started the collective, we had some like visioning, just collective visioning together, where we were like, what do you want to get out of this space? Because the space ultimately is not about me, like Kang Yoo Jin. Like, it's about us and having a space where people feel both seen and represented, but also feel like they can help create it. So lots of different topics arose from that, and that's how we base our programming. And so there's a lot of topics around like self and community care, boundary work, relationships is a big one. Like, how do I center myself in my relationships? So that's a big core part of our programming. We have some in-person workshops in the DC and Maryland area, which has been amazing. We had like a flower workshop we partnered with the florist in DC named Flor del Sol. So we had a flower bar workshop with them, and that was fabulous. And we also partnered with Homegirls Unite and Eldest Daughter Club to have a celebration of Eldest Daughters Day last year. So there's just a lot of ways we're really excited to keep partnering and doing fun stuff too, not just talking about, trauma healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we also like to emphasize too. It's like, oftentimes trauma healing feel like it's a heavy subject, and it is, right? But there is also room, like we keep talking about, we're creating space and room to also have fun and also have, collectively beautiful experiences through our healing process too. And I think you all are doing a great job of creating those spaces, it sounds like.
Thank you. Yes, that's something I'm so glad you said that, Suchin, because that's something that came up within our organizing team, our leadership team our theme for this year is about community care, and what a year to be practicing that, in 2025, this has just been such a challenging year collectively, individually, every way. But one thing that we don't want to miss is the joy of community. There's like a accountability piece and a discipline piece. Like, you also need to show up to be shown up for. But also part of showing up can be having joy with people and inciting just pleasure. I think that's something as an eldest daughter I know I've struggled with, is not only centering myself, but then centering joy felt like so indulgent. Oh, I don't know. That's not really that important as long as everyone else is okay and I'm okay. Like, I don't need to really center that. But that's been a big part of my healing practice is knowing that joy is actually vulnerable. It's actually really vulnerable to experience joy for me. But then sharing it with others has helped me practice it more.
Oh my goodness. Have to make a note. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much, Eugene, for this amazing conversation, sharing so vulnerably about your life, your story, your struggles, but also sharing so much of the vulnerable joys that you've been experiencing too.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so lastly, where people can find you and Eldest Daughters Collective?
Okay, amazing. We have most of our social media presence right now is on Instagram. It's at Eldest Daughters Collective. And we also have a website that we're still sprucing up, but it's eldestdaughterscollective.com. And that's where people can stay up to date with us. If you don't use social media, we have our link tree in our bio where you'll get all the same information, just not the pretty graphic.
So please find Eugene and the Eldest Daughters Collective on Instagram, as well as their website, Eldest Daughters Collective again. We are so excited to also announce that we are going to have some collaborations as well. And so for those listeners that are followers of the Yellow Chair Collective, you will also see us in same spaces.
I'm so pumped.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. The conversation was so great. There's a lot to think about and process. So I hope our audience also can take that away.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for listening for Yellow Chair Collective, the podcast. If you have found any value from the show, please follow us at Yellow Chair Collective on Instagram and go on our website, yellowchaircollective.com, if you would like our services.